Hello, as you know, the United States has a close relationship with Taiwan. However, the US never supported Taiwan's declaration of independence. Why is that? And if Taiwan is attacked by China, will the US come to help Taiwan fight back? Let's find out together. Let's take a look at the relationship between the three sides of Taiwan, China, and the United States. If you have watched the video "What is Taiwan for China?" on the channel of Interesting Knowledge, you already know that. In 1949, during the Chinese Civil War, Chiang Kai-shek was defeated by Mao Zedong, had to flee to Taiwan, where Chiang established a new government and declared himself China. Inside the mainland, Mao Zedong also established a government and he also declared himself China. At that time, the US did not care about this issue. It did not matter which side was China, and the US did not interfere. However, when the Korean War broke out, the US realized that Taiwan has an important position in the US strategy, so the US decided to support Taiwan. Therefore, in 1954, the United States came to shake hands with Taiwan, together signed a defense treaty, promising to defend Taiwan if attacked by China. Therefore, in the following years, even though it was strong enough, mainland China could not send troops to occupy Taiwan to unify into a single China because Taiwan was protected by the US. In addition, the US also declared that it did not recognize the name of the People's Republic of China, that is, mainland China of Mao Zedong. However, this situation lasted only 25 years, because in 1979 there was a serious threat to the US strategy, that is the Soviet Union. Incidentally, the Soviet Union was also an enemy of mainland China. So, to oppose the Soviet Union, the US sought to connect with China and officially recognized the People's Republic of China as the only legitimate government of China. The US recognized that there is only one China is the only one, and Taiwan is part of China. So, has the United States turned its back on Taiwan? Many of you will think, when the US says Taiwan is part of China, the US has officially eliminated the existence of Taiwan. But it turned out not. It is true that the US said, there is only one China and Taiwan is part of China, but what China is defined as, the US did not specify. It is because of this vague way of saying that the US has both made friends with mainland China and not offended Taiwan. And to connect with mainland China, the US also terminated the military treaty with Taiwan, which means that if Taiwan is attacked, the US is not obliged to send troops to defend, so China will see the US is very good-willed in relations with them. But the US did not abandon Taiwan. To replace the military treaty, the US cooperated with Taiwan through the Taiwan Relations Act of 1979. In this act, it stipulates, first, the United States is obligated must sell defensive weapons to Taiwan, and secondly, the President of the United States must bring the situation of Taiwan to Congress for Congress to decide whether to help Taiwan or not if Taiwan is attacked. This means that although the United States is not obligated to save Taiwan if it is attacked, but if Congress agrees, the US will still save it. And the tripartite relationship remains that way to this day, more than 40 years later. So why doesn't the US support Taiwan's declaration of independence? We must know that China is pursuing the policy of one country, two regime, that is, Taiwan is still considered China's, only temporarily managed by a different regime from mainland China. In the future, China will try to bring Taiwan back to reunification with China to become a single regime, but China wants to do the reunification by peaceful solution and China will do it gradually. As long as Taiwan does not declare independence, China will leave it alone. But if Taiwan declares independence, things will no longer be peaceful. The Chinese ambassador to the United States said, if Taiwan declares independence, it will be a dangerous and destabilizing act for region, and the spokesman for China's foreign ministry said, if Taiwan declares independence, China will never allow that to happen. The final solution is the unification of 3 billion Chinese people, including people in Taiwan, and he also stressed that there is no force that can stop China from doing it. Currently, China is said to be still adding about 50 missiles a year in the Taiwan Strait area, and now the total number of missiles is more than 500 which are heading directly towards Taiwan. China is also developing cruise and multi-warhead missiles, and the deputy director of the Institute of International Relations, National University in Taiwan, said, Taiwan's missile defense system will not can stop these missiles coming from China. Thus, if Taiwan declares independence, China will definitely attack Taiwan, and the US does not want this to happen. The US still follows the vague strategy of not saying whether to protect Taiwan or not. The US still sometimes warns China about an attack on Taiwan, which may lead to US military intervention. But if the US joins the war and confronts China, the US will surely suffer heavy losses. If not participating in the war, Taiwan will surely fall. The US will lose a friend, a democracy that the US is always proud of. Therefore, the best way is for Taiwan not to declare independence, just live peacefully. That's what the US wants. So, you understand why the US does not support Taiwan's declaration of independence. Thank you for watching the video, goodbye and see you again.